Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? I hope that you are well. I hope that life is treating you well, wherever you are on this planet, this huge planet that sometimes seems so big, doesn't it? And yet, in some ways, it's so small as we whirl into the universe. What a magnificent joy, really, it is, and an honor to be part of something so great. And I think that we all forget, I suppose, that we are infinite and we are greater than what we actually believe to be sometimes. And that is where our power is that we have such a strength within us. Equally, we can all be fragile beings. But if we connect to the power source, whatever you want to call it, the universe, I call it God, we are really so strong, and we are so much stronger when we work together, when we love together. So let's do that. Let's do more of that, and let's tell each other how we feel about each other and how much we do love each other, because time is so short on this planet, and we need to sort of really embrace every moment with love and compassion. Now, I am absolutely overjoyed, I have to say to you, to welcome my guest today, who is someone that I really deeply respect for all the things that he does for people. And he does it in such a humble way and on so many levels. Today, I welcome Mir Abbas Ali, who is an acupuncturist, a martial arts master, and a Chinese medicine expert. He's many other things, but he's far too humble and doesn't want me to say all of it. So I will just keep it very low key for the moment, but I'm sure that you will see he is a very, very wise being, and he has so much to share with people. After he graduated as an acupuncturist and in the Shaolin Arts, he started to train in the Taoist arts, which is Qigong, Neigong, Bagua, Tui Na, and many others, too many to mention, really. Mir's quest with the internal arts has been more on the side of serious meditation and spiritual inquiry. And he tells us that this type of training keeps one seeking and developing for the rest of one's life. He is experienced in the martial arts such as Escrima, Pencak Silat, and Systema, as well as modern self-defense systems. He has had the privilege to represent Great Britain in the Chee Kim Thong lineage of Nan Shaolin Wuzuquan in China, and to be filmed for Chinese documentaries. He has also been interviewed for many Chinese news programs. Having traveled to train, Mir has met many masters and trained with them in China, America, Malaysia, Europe, and New Zealand. And in 19, I don't know what happened to me then. Maybe he did in 1917. Who knows? Who knows? But in 2017, he was awarded a 7th Dan grade by the International Southern Shaolin Five Ancestors Association in China, which is a credit really to all his dedication and work. Mir has also been fortunate enough to have received years of transmissions and training in Taoist lineage energy arts, as well as training regularly with legendary Russian masters. And also, he has traveled to New Zealand to learn from true Maori warriors and healers, something that actually I find very fascinating. And they were generous enough to pass on their teachings to him from their family and lineages to help benefit people on this side of the world. In fact, on all four corners of the earth. Today, he shares his incredible life journey. Welcome, dear Mir.
You're welcome. No, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And thank you for agreeing to come on. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just looking out of the window right now. It's really, really very grey and it's starting to get quite misty, but I think it's quite beautiful as well, actually. So it's lovely.
There's a
Okay.
certain magic about mist, isn't there?
Yeah, it's great. And also I can see some chimney tops as well. So it's just nice to see some live fires, and there's a church in the background. So it's just very rarely in this room. So it's just it's nice to see things like this from a different perspective.
It is, it's true. You can be somewhere for years and never really sort of see every aspect of it. I suppose it's about our perspective of life, isn't it? Sometimes when we change our perspective, we can see so many things in different ways.
Oh, totally. And then, you know, there's your perspective, my perspective, a different perspective in time, you know, the big perspectives. And, you know, it's just really interesting. One of the things you mentioned, the Maoris that I studied with, and one of them, his name was Manu. He was wise beyond his years. He was amazing. Unfortunately, he died a few years ago, but he was brilliant. And one of the things he would always say to people is, don't think so small. You know, think beyond you. Think beyond yourself. You know, don't see the world or the universe for just you. You know, don't think so small. And it's true. There are so many more perspectives.
Yes, don't think so small, and really infinitely. We are so great in so many ways that we don't even realize sometimes. And that's a lot about your work, isn't it? It's about an inner work. Now, I always say this to my guest from the beginning. Tell us a little bit before we go on to all your fantastic adventures and all the wonderful work that you do, because I have to say, Mir is a fantastic therapist and a teacher. You know, he is amazing. And I would like him today, and, you know, hopefully he'll agree, to share some of that wisdom with you. But tell us a little bit, Mir, how it all began for you, this journey.
Sure. Well, I guess I was quite fortunate, though perhaps it didn't feel like it at the time, to being born kind of mixed race from two Asian kind of lineages. My mother was born and raised in the Philippines before kind of moving to the UK as a young midwife, and my father, he was born in India, but when India and Pakistan were separated, because he came from a Muslim family, they moved over to Pakistan. Excuse me. And then they were both in the UK, both got together. Both had really interesting pasts and families themselves. One thing I've kind of got to really grips with in the last few years is the fact that they both had healers on both sides of the family. So I was lucky. I guess my dad was the seventh son, and there were kind of things that went with that. His uncles were kind of healers and herbalists, and a lot of the current generation are kind of like doctors and dentists. So that's how that's come down on the father's side. On my mother's side, her father, who unfortunately died when she was young, he was, I think, the only herbalist in the area of that particular part of the Philippines. So people would come to see him. And my mum's mother, though she doesn't practice anymore, was a spiritual healer back then too. But things changed over the years. Excuse me. So she no longer practices, and whenever we've asked about it, she either chooses not to talk about it or has completely forgotten. But she's very, very old, so you know, she may have forgotten all that a long, long time ago.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, because I know that, you know, I've met many like yourself, masters and healers, and a lot of them don't like to talk about it, you know, but it's so needed in these times. So I think they're students and people that can learn from them. We need them because we're in serious need of people to guide us somewhere along the line towards something which is, you know, a better way of life, a better way of living. Because the way I think that we were living, most of us before, wasn't really working. So that's why all these sort of traditional arts, I think, are now very, very popular.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I said, they're really important. And what we've had and what I've come across in the last, definitely at least the last 10 years, but perhaps 20, is that some of these kind of much more hidden masters and people who've kept quiet for a long time, And in many cases, they're told to keep quiet. They're told not to come to the forefront. They've basically got the message that they are to come out now, and in the last 10, 20 years, that they need to be told, need to be heard, they need to tell of what they do, because they need the vibration of everyone and everything to rise. Now is not the time to be necessarily hiding everything. There are certain things which must remain hidden, but for masters to come forward and kind of help the masses, this is the time. This is time, whether it's healing or martial arts or general independent thought, spiritual awakenings in whichever way possible. It's an important time for people to step forward and to step up, and for real teachings to be out there, because unfortunately what's happened is far too much mediocre teachings, and not even real teachings. Kind of mediocre information has basically proliferated because the real truth and real lineages of hundreds or thousands of years have basically kept quiet, kept in the back. And they're quite happy to do so, which is fine. However, that means things of not particularly worthwhile kind of practices have come to the forefront, and they are being kind of touted as the best thing ever. And this is a cycle that has gone on, for thousands of years, and people wrote about it for thousands of years. How, when things that were true were, told to the masses as being false, and falsehoods became the truth, the new truth. And it's, that's been around for a long time, but now this is another time when we need to be stepping forward and helping people with the real deal, and what's real for all people, and old truths which remain truths for tens, hundreds or thousands of years, and even longer.
It's very true. It's very true, because if someone is told a lie, I think for 40 days, they begin to believe the lie. They say it takes apparently 40 days to create a habit, and then it takes 3 times the 40 days, if you're lucky, to break the habit. So I think humanity is now, as you said, it's at an awakening point where everything that is not real is actually collapsing. And I, for one, I'm glad. It's a difficult process. Even the caterpillar that then goes into the cocoon and then turns into a butterfly, that's not an easy process. But I think we all have to go through that transitional period. Now, how did you become interested? I know that your family are healers from several generations, but how did you decide to become interested in becoming an acupuncturist, into Chinese medicine, and you're also a martial arts master? How did this journey begin for you?
I guess it was always there in the background. I think some of it was passed down generationally. I think some of it's karmic. So there was a certain amount which was passed down the bloodlines, which I couldn't avoid. So that's been there before kind of I was around. But
part of your DNA.
It's part of my DNA, well, most definitely, because the martial arts and healing side of things have been part of generations on both sides of my family well before me. And there's some great stories of, well, perhaps not so great stories of kind of things that they've done in the past, which are and aren't good, but definitely have led to me being like this. But I guess with regards to the martial arts, just like a lot of people, kind of growing up in London, I watched an awful lot of TV, and whether it was a kung fu movie that we rented on VHS, Monkey or Water Margin, or David Carradine and Kung Fu. That was, I think, the first one I can remember. Or good old Hong Kong Fu. Those were the days in the 70s when that was
the
all
good days,
the good days. Yeah, much simpler. So, that was all part of normal, everyday kind of pop culture and society. So it's just whether it's songs about kung fu fighting or anything else like that, that was always there. And I guess with regards to the whole medicine side of things, I guess that came from my mum, definitely so, because, like I said, she was a midwife, but coming from the Philippines and from a fairly modest, poor background in the Philippines, they had a background, like I said, her father was a herbalist and her mother a spiritualist, but essentially, I hope I don't offend anyone by saying this, but essentially the spirituality that she had was basically taken away because of she decided to devote herself to Christianity. So that side of things basically disappeared. The spiritual side disappeared as she became more and more involved with the church.
And what was she before that, prior to that?
I guess basically she was just a normal person in the Philippines. By and large, most people have a subsistence living hand to mouth, ploughing the land. Like I said, her husband, my grandfather, was a herbalist and farmer, and she would have helped with the land too, but basically had 4 children to raise on her own. So, I guess, one of the things that happens in the Philippines is you're surrounded by extended family. It's not just like 1 or 2 of you. There's probably 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 of you in a village that you've grown up and your ancestors have grown up in for hundreds of thousands of years. So, the land and the people have been there for a long time and served the family. So even though she would have been, a single mother with 4 children back then, and she's now, we're December 2020, and she's just celebrated her 104th birthday. So,
wow, Mir. Congratulations to her.
Yeah.
My goodness.
That's amazing. So 80 odd years ago, she was like a single mum. So it's just 70 or 80 years ago. So, she had the support around her, but that meant, everything that came with that, I'm sure. But, so there was healing from that side. And, my mother brought that with her, that traditional side of things. So even though she was a Western trained midwife, and we were given antibiotics and told to go to the doctor when we were young, if something happened, she would say, "Oh, rub this on it," or put candle wax on it, or don't go outside because your hair's wet. And it's like, what? This is really weird. No one else.
I still don't do that, actually.
No, yeah, I don't do it. I don't do it either. You'd always say, "Don't go out with your hair wet and wait a whole hour after a bath before you go out." And
absolutely the truth. Yeah.
And these all these things that I've never heard many other people's mums say, but that was gospel as far as she was concerned. And I did what she said, and not to go out in the rain and then get your hair wet, and it was amazing.
But it's the old traditional wisdom, isn't it? That
yes, absolutely.
It really does. They're the small things, but really they make complete sense, don't they?
They do, and they contain generational information and generational wisdom. Something like, don't go out when it's raining and your hair gets wet. That could have gone down hundreds of thousands of years. That people have deduced and seen it and just like, well, every time someone goes out, this is what happens. And they just pass that down. And it would have been kind of an oral tradition, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have written it down in a special book. You would tell your family, you would tell the village, listen, I've found that, this happened to my grandfather, it happened to my father too, and it's happening to me, and we all did this. So if you guys do this, that's what will happen. If you don't do this, this other thing will happen. So you guys decide. And the wisdom was passed down, and it was really, really important, and that's what informed people before we started getting into science, and that's what informed my mother, and that's what informs me and many other people. I'm sure your listeners too. It's just that's really, really important.
It is, and there's a lot to be said. I mean, modern medicine, holds its place, but I'm a great believer, and with my work as well, I'm very much into complementary medicine and, all of the natural ways, because for me, in my life, it has always helped me. I do believe that sometimes you have to have modern medicine. It is just one of those things. But on a day-to-day living, to prevent anything, I think if we could live more naturally, we could really, I think for our mental health also, what you eat and everything makes a huge difference, doesn't it, Mir?
It does. It's a huge difference. In Chinese medicine, everyone refers to this book called Huangdi Neigong, which means the Yellow Emperor's Classic. It's like the original book of Chinese medicine, and the whole of Chinese medicine for the last 2,500 years has been built on that book. And in the first chapter, in the first paragraph, one of the things it talks about is how to keep basically a healthy, long life. And it's built, it's a really interesting kind of book in terms of it asks this basically the Yellow Emperor, which most people think is a fictional character, asking someone called Chibo, which is like again, we think a fictional kind of doctor or wise person. This person is answering the Yellow Emperor and telling some very wise things. And the Yellow Emperor asks Chibo, how long did people live for before? And Chibo said 120 years easily, but could be longer before. And then the Yellow Emperor would say, well, how was this achieved? And Chibo would say, well, it's very simple. First, they must look after their diet. They must, have good sleep, go to sleep when it's dark, wake up when it's light, not work too hard, drink water, have exercise, and, go about their daily life with as little stress and not too much not too much joy, which means basically not excessive, not being excessive, not partying all the time. So taking
the middle way, so
the middle way, yeah. And this was a collection of bamboo that was written down 2,400 years ago, and this was written about how they said this was how the ancients did it. So they're referring to people way older than them. And this is how they lived to 120 or longer. So, people know about this all around the world and have known about it a long time. It's just that we seem to have complicated it. And
as human beings, yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it's simple, isn't it? It's about the simplicity of life and a simple way of life. I mean, if we lived on a farm and we had our own animals or, grew our own vegetables, life would be far less complicated, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the reason why my grandmother's 104 and why her mother, well, they said she lived to 113, though we suspect in reality it's closer to 108, 109, something like that.
Incredible. My goodness.
So, it's still really good. But I think, they led the very simple lives. They basically drank clean water, ate clean food, worked the land themselves, were surrounded by family. And remember, this was basically, if we're talking about my grandmother who is still alive in the southern part of the Philippines, or her mother, often there's no electricity. So it's candlelight or nothing. That's it, or sunshine. So when it's dark, you're going to sleep. When it's light at 4 o'clock, you're waking up. So you went with the natural rhythms of the earth and of the planet and of the universe. And that's, if you led that middle way, if you went with the way of the world, you didn't go against it, this is basically what happens. And you live a long, fulfilling life, hopefully largely full of good health and happiness. And that's just the way it works. But modern life and everything else kind of complicates things. But that's
it certainly does. And I think a lot of the things from the ancients that I've looked at and that I've been taught is that there is a wisdom that is universal. It doesn't matter what background you're from or where you're from, but there is a certain river that flows that is consistent in humanity and in the animal world and in the plant world, that is a sustainer of life. As you said, there is, I know that you do Qigong and all of these internal arts. Now, is that, they use that principle, don't they, of this life force?
Yes, that's right. Yes. So life force, or kind of chi, as it's often described, of I guess the literal English translation is energy, but it's far more than that. That's not even a correct way of describing it. But let's say life force or vitality is a far better way of describing chi. That's a very, very important part of Qigong, the internal arts, and I guess just in being. But of course it's ignored in terms of sort of being, in terms of just walking to the post office or brushing your hair or doing the dishes or smiling at people. It's all present. It's always there. But we kind of reserve it for special practices like Qigong and meditation when we then turn our attention to what is always there anyway. We just kind of remind ourselves and then do a special practice to what is always available and abundant. But
how do you live in that moment, Mir? How can we live in a way that is, I don't even want to say mindful because that's been overused, but in a way where we are fully awake and present in every moment, that we are actually being sustained by this life force, so to speak?
Yeah. So there are many ways. So let's say there are two roads to it. One is to do the practices. Let's say you do lots of Qigong, meditation, breathing, a combination of all of them. So you have these separate practices, and then you get about your life where you kind of forget about it or maybe think about it every now and then. But it's not until you do these practices that you remind yourself of the wonderment of the world and the universe. The other way is to almost absorb yourself completely in it and to let all the things that are getting in the way kind of dissolve away. So you can still be very much present in life and you can still have a job, you can still drive from the M1 down to London and not kind of like space out and be on a different planet in your mind. But the things which get in the way, like stress and anger, you recognize them immediately and you let them dissolve as soon as possible. Obviously, that's not always possible to do very easily or very quickly, but it can be done. So what you're doing is removing the obstacles, and that comes back to what we were saying at the beginning about perspective. And if you're looking at things and thinking how things are always difficult for us, though, why is it always me? Why is it always like this? Again, that's often a matter of perspective. And, it may always be you. It may not always be you. It's back to that habit thing. You've created a habit and told yourself something for 30 days that you now believe is the absolute truth. And now you are living according to this truth that you've told yourself, and you can live by that for years. I mean, I was listening to something on the radio a few months ago, and they were talking about how phobias for some people are made. And the psychiatrist or psychologist, perhaps, she was saying, well, it could be formed in 5 or 10 minutes when you're young. And it can be...
Really? That's interesting. Tell us a little bit about that, because I'm interested.
Oh, she said it's such an easy thing. She said you could be sat at the table and a meal is presented to you, and then someone says, okay, you need to eat your greens. And then you perhaps don't like the look of them, how they taste or how they smell. And then you say no. And they said, no, you must eat your greens. Either you're not allowed to leave the table. And then you say no. Or in that moment, you eat them, one or the other. But in your mind, what you do immediately is you say to yourself, I don't like greens. Yuck, I hate greens. And then within the same sentence or the same paragraph in your head, you suddenly say, I don't like broccoli. I don't like anything green. And you grow up telling yourself that, and that message stays in your head. And before you know it, you've told yourself you're allergic to green food. You don't eat anything except things that are red, yellow, and beige. And suddenly, in a few minutes, you have kind of programmed yourself for a lifetime of kind of basically untruths or something that you've done to yourself as a 4 or 5-year-old or 6 or 7-year-old. And that's how you live your life, according to that. And, I've met people and treated people who kind of only eat pizza and only eat tomatoes, pizza and chips. That's it. They don't eat anything else. And these are grown adults.
I've met people like that. How do you deal with people like that?
As one of my teachers said, is to land gently on the topic. And the way I personally do it is lots of different ways. I don't force the issue. I think one of the things that happens is people are fully aware of their own misgivings and of their own issues. They know what they do wrong, and they know they shouldn't do something. So especially these people who only eat pizza and chips, they know they shouldn't do that, and that's fine. And what I do is I just leave them with the information. Let's say perhaps a classic is people not drinking enough water, and they come to me for backache or dry skin or something like that. And I'll say, okay, well, if you don't drink water, I totally understand it, and that's absolutely fine. But you do understand that the reason why your skin is dry is because it's not being nourished by enough. It's not being hydrated enough. The water you have is enough from the food that you eat and the fruit that you eat to perhaps hydrate your brain, your heart, perhaps the really important functions. But you don't have surplus. You don't have anything that's going to help with the dry eyes, with the dry skin, the dry nails, and the dry hair. So, as long as you know that, that's absolutely fine. And I think I just basically give people the information and let them process it in a way that's comfortable for them. I don't want to force anything on people. I think I've come to the realization that, people make their decisions rightly or wrongly. It's not even my, it's their way. It's not my way. I just give the information. We all have to find our own way. And if I can give information, fine. And if they choose to do something with that information that's out of their own comfort zone, then I'll help them as much as I can. Absolutely.
And yours is a very genteel approach, isn't it? Because there's no force in it. Because I know some therapists, they have a very tough approach to things. But I think gentleness in the end wins the game somehow.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. When you come to kind of Chinese philosophy and arts, etc., there's yin and yang is very forceful, and it's about kind of if someone's scared of spiders, you put them in a room full of spiders, and all that kind of thing. And then the very yin way, a very soft, gentle way, would be not even to be speaking about it, and perhaps then you might see something on the wall that's made from a light, the shadowing from a lampshade that's reminiscent of, let's say, a cobweb or shape of cobwebs. And then you just let that sink in, or, have spider plants or things that aren't overtly connected, but have a tenuous link. And then very slowly let that seep in. And then they see more cobwebs and things that have gentle associations. And then you breathe gently with it. And I think having a yin soft approach can be actually way more powerful. A very masculine, strong, young approach, yes, of course it works. And I think I have that as part of my personality, especially as a martial artist. That's how we do things, But perhaps I'm getting a bit old and doing too much meditation, and I kind of see that actually the more powerful way is actually to be soft and gentle. It's longer lasting in a way.
Yes. And do you think it's like when the river flows? Sometimes it flows very gently, but sometimes it needs to flow with power. It depends on the circumstance and the situation, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I think, that's how rivers are cut, isn't it? Rivers kind of cut into gorges, and they cut through rock, through one drip at a time, through, hundreds of thousands of years. And it's, then they become unstoppable forces of nature. And it's that soft, long-term, long game is one, it's obviously it's softer, it's gentler, it's kinder, but it can, I think in the grander scheme of things, more often than not, is more compassionate too, which for the betterment of people is a better thing overall. You kind of, people have choices, and whether they make those choices or not is entirely up to them, because it's obviously it's their karma and their way, it's their life. But if you're not forcing the issue, then that, I've come to understand, is a better way. In my current understanding of where I see things anyway, because I didn't always think like this. Obviously being young, I would always force the issue and think that that'd be the better way of doing things. But as you get older, you kind of stand back and let people make their own choices, which some people think is a bit standoffish, perhaps, or perhaps even a bit aloof. I can understand that. But what you're actually doing is something that's really quite powerful and compassionate. You're doing something called witnessing. You're bearing witness to someone making a true decision from themselves. That they haven't been forced into, the information's there, but it's come from entirely from them. Really, they've made the final decision. The reminders might be there, the influence might be there, but they're the ones that have decided to act upon it. Whereas a very strong kind of way of dealing with things is saying, no, you must do this. You must eat your greens. You must do this. You mustn't go out. You must say this. You must marry this person. All of that. That's a very strong way of doing things, and it's the way people do things all the time. But if of course can work, but can have equally adverse reactions. So it's just it's not always the way. It's not always the way. There are different ways, of course, and we all have to find our own way. But yeah, it's
true.
If you give space for people to grow, then out of that kind of very compassionate, held space, people do something that's right for them and for others.
That's really profound, because a couple of things came to my mind when you were speaking, Mir, because it's very true what you say. You have to allow people to be who they are. When I was running one of my workshops, and I won't say the country, but we had a reflexology and a breathing workshop, and we had a lady who wanted to come onto the workshop, and she wanted to do the reflexology, which is to do with the feet, of course. But her thing was that she didn't want to take her shoes off, which sort of makes it impossible. And my friend's husband at the time, he is a psychologist, and they'd been working with her for 4 years because she did not want to take her shoes off ever.
Yeah.
So she had a thing. We all have our things.
We do.
And the funny thing is, she said, I want to have a treatment with Mimi. And they said, well, what treatment do you want? And she said, a reflexology. Okay. So we went into the room, and she was looking at me because she was testing me. You know how people do. And
yes.
I said, so you want a reflexology? She said, yes, yes, yes. I said, okay. I said, so how do you want me to do it? And she said, well, however you do it. I said, well, usually we do it on the feet. And she said, right. She said, I've got shoes on. I said, I know. So I thought, okay, this will be interesting, but I will never forget this lady for the rest of my life. And I said, okay. I said, so how do we do this? And she said, well, I'll do it how you want to do it. I thought, well, I'm not going to mention take your shoes off, because clearly she doesn't want to take her shoes off.
Yes.
I said, I don't know. Should we do it over your shoes? She said, over my shoes? And I said, yes. She wasn't, and I said, let's do it over your shoes. She said, well, that's a bit ludicrous. I said, oh, well, how do you want to do it? She said, well, I'll take my shoes off. So she took her shoes off. And I was totally normal about the whole thing. And we were totally normal. And she walks out, because my friends had a clinic, and she had no shoes on. And they were just totally flabbergasted. And after they said, 4 years we tried to get her to take her bloody shoes off. And I said, I know. What did you do? I said, I just accepted that she wanted to wear the shoes.
Yes.
And that was it. In that moment, in that moment of just saying, do you want to wear the shoes? Then just wear the shoes.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that, isn't it? Sometimes it's one of those eureka moments where the conditions and the timing and the acceptance of someone, Mir, isn't it?
Yeah. That's really important. That acceptance of who you are, allowing that space for people to be who they are, and to have questions up in the air, and to have silence, and to have maybe have nothing there, as it were. No forcefulness, no agendas, other agendas. It just allows for something to come of itself, doesn't it? And that's perfect. Yeah, that's how things work.
It's true. I mean, humans are fascinating for me. And I remember I had a lady that I was dealing with, and she had a hand that was deformed. And she kept stroking this hand. And it was just to get my attention. She was a client of mine, a patient of mine. And I said to her one day, "Why do you keep stroking it?" She said, "Because you don't want to talk about it." I said, "Oh, so you want me to give you attention?" And she said, "Well, yes, that's why I'm stroking it." And it's simply, I think, sometimes that we just need love.
Yes,
You know,
that's right. Yeah.
That's what we're all sort of craving for, isn't it?
Yeah. Love, I think acknowledgement. An awful lot of people want acknowledgement, attention, space, and acknowledgement of who we really are. Absolutely, because a lot of people aren't seen. Most people aren't seen. You're the person that works in the office who works next to Brenda, or you're the person that does the photocopying. You're not seen. You're the person who walks down the road with the dog. You're that dog's dad or whatever. You're not seen. It's people always kind of, when we used to have a dog, Alfie, as you know, people say, "Oh, there's Alfie's dad." They didn't know who I was or what I did, or they didn't see me. They saw the dog.
Yes. You were connected because of the dog.
Yeah, that was it. And I think, especially in this current era, just people are wanting to be seen. They want to be acknowledged. They want to see for who they are. But unfortunately, because of social media and the way things are, people have a superficial way of being seen, and wanting to be seen, and they want to be heard. But in this world where, so many people are putting themselves forward with superficial things, people are having to do crazier and crazier things to be heard. And even long established institutions, such as news channels, etc., they're having to do things so that they can be heard, because they are no longer as relevant as they once were. Because everyone's turning to social media for their news and for the information. Suddenly, these institutions, which have been around for decades or even hundreds of years, whether they're newspapers or news outlets or media outlets of some sort, they're no longer being heard. So now they're having to do things which are outlandish so that people see them now. They're acting in teenagers so that they can be seen, because everyone's paying attention everywhere else. And you've got absolute information overload, and everyone's basically, the underlying message is people want to be seen. People want to be acknowledged.
But the funny thing is, Mir, it's like a double-edged sword, because the people that you see, mostly, I'm not saying all, but a lot of people that you see on social media, the lives that they portray are not real anyway.
No, not at all. Not at all. As I was speaking to one of my, I was going to say, she'd love me to call her one of my younger patients, but she's probably in her 30s now, but I've known her since she was a school child. So, she was telling me how she knew people who, she's in London and involved in the whole corporate world, and she knows people who work, and all they do is they live in not particularly nice apartment, but they do have these 2 very nice cars, and they spend all their money on just the apartment and the 2 nice cars that they rent that don't belong to them. And they do all the social media stuff, lots of Instagram and other things, with pictures of them looking like they're going to places, doing things, making themselves look like they have very interesting kind of lives. And she said it's all a lie. And she said they don't do anything except stay in the house and take pictures of themselves in the car. So they even kind of hire private jets. They're people that rent out private jets for half an hour. It's left on the runway.
But people do that.
Yeah, they do that. And she said, you can take a picture of yourself, walking up and going down kind of the ramp or onto a private jet. Take pictures of you on the private jet and whatever you want for half an hour. And obviously you could have weeks or months worth of viewing there. I guess if you change your clothes a few times, that's you kind of done for the next year, really, isn't it? It looks
I can't believe that.
Yeah, and then she says, that's it. And occasionally do that. So, they're living this lie where they're basically unfulfilled, where they're telling the world that they're off on jets, going to places, that they've got these nice cars, that they're doing really cool, interesting things with. And they're making other people feel really inadequate because those people can't attain what they think these people have. And it's all a lie. It's lie upon lie upon lie. And it's just,
Isn't that sad, Mir?
crazy. Yeah, that we're lacking the truth. We're lacking real truth.
That's the point. That's the point. Where is the truth?
Yeah.
Because the truth isn't hidden. The truth is there.
The truth is there. The truth is obvious and big.
But people
and
don't
loud.
believe the truth. They believe the lies.
No, that's right. That's right. And, again, and there's this book called The Tao Te Ching, which is a kind of a classic. It's the second most translated book in the world after the Bible, after the Christian Bible. And it's, and it talks about this, and it just talks about the lies and truths and falsehoods. And this is what happens, and it's happened, it's obviously been happening for thousands of years in China, that it was so important that they decided to write it down on scrolls so that it would be kept and told down to future generations. And it's happening now, and it basically happens in every single age and always will be.
It's true. It's true. It's history repeating itself. And I always think of that fairy story, the Emperor's New Clothes.
Yes, yes.
You know that story.
Yes, yeah.
People out there, it's an emperor, and he was tricked into having these clothes, and they weren't real because the tricksters made him go naked. And it was only a child, wasn't it, Mir, that shouted out, but he's not wearing any clothes. But, everyone had believed the lie. And sometimes I feel like I'm in that type of world.
We are, Mimi. We are in that world.
I feel like it.
Whether we're told that we should have 1 million followers on social media, whether we're told that wearing a makeup in a certain way is the current truth, or our clothes in a certain way is the truth, or we should have certain cars or whatever, or watch certain programs. They're all the Emperor's New Clothes. It's all terrible. They're all untruth, and the truth is always there and obvious, because it's basically what people don't do, and they know they should.
Yes, and I think this is the whole thing. I don't know what's made, I'm not wise enough to say what's made society become false. I don't know if it's the rise of material wealth. I really don't have the answer to that, but I feel sad because I have a friend of mine, and she's totally obsessed with social media, and you can talk to her and she'll be in a bad mood. And I'll say to her, only the other day, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm such a bad mood." And I said, "Why?" "Oh, I was looking at, I don't know what it was, Instagram, I think it was, that's her favourite. And I don't look like anybody there. And, they're having such a good life." And I said, "But it's all BS. It's not true."
Yeah.
She said, "It is true. Otherwise they wouldn't put it up."
No, it's not. It's not true at all.
Oh my goodness, hours on social media. Yeah. And it's all a lie, Mir.
It's all a lie. If you talk about Instagram, obviously they're not the only people, but
there's some beautiful things on there, actually.
Wonderful.
Like recipes and all sorts of things.
Well, excellent. You can see really inspirational things in there. It's wonderful. I think just like any tool, things can be used for good or bad. And it's, I remember a couple of years ago when I was on a beach with a friend we were down in Cornwall, and she's got 3 children, 3 girls, 3 beautiful girls, and they were basically arguing all day. It was one of those days when nothing was going right. Everyone was arguing, things were left behind, and it was just the girls had to be separated, and they weren't talking to each other, and then there was arguments about where we were going to sit on this beach, and it was just one of those things. Myself, my partner, and the other couple, we just sat there, and the girls weren't getting on, and then for perhaps, I don't know, there must have been like 5, 10, 15 seconds when on this beach, the sun was going down, and the girls looked like they were kind of from the perspective, and again, it's all about perspectives, from the perspective we were sat at, it looked like they were all getting on. So the mum, she took a photo, and on the photo, it looked like all 3 girls were playing on the beach, gathering stones to make something really pretty, beaches in the background, and it looked gorgeous. And she put it up on Instagram and said, and said something about how the perfect whatever happened and how beautiful the girls were. And, about 5-10 seconds after that photo was taken, one of the girls said something mean to the other girl, and it was all back to normal again. But if you didn't know that, and I spent that whole day, we stayed at that house for about a week, and I spent the whole day with them, and she took a photo of the 5 or 10 seconds in which everything kind of seemed to look okay. Post that onto Instagram, and the world must have thought, wow, she has this wonderful life. How amazing is that? But the rest of the day wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
She basically posted a half truth or a real truth in amongst a bigger lie. It was just, it's crazy. But, social media is full of that. And I think as long as we accept that and know that, then that's fine. Whereas if we start believing our own untruths and other people's, we're in trouble, and we feel inadequate. We feel that we're not good enough. We feel insecure, and we feel unhappy. And, it all comes down to perspective. And I think, people are starting to believe these things when they should know that it's all made up, really.
It's all made up. And, the whole world is made up, it seems to me. If you don't look at your phone and you don't look at anything, sometimes I completely switch off and I have nothing to do with anything. It's my way of recharging. You realize really the simple things in life are the most powerful. And I think we do talk a lot, and we talk a lot. Well, I'm sure you don't, but sometimes I think, why are you saying that? It's complete nonsense. And it's because, it's this thing of society where you sometimes have to do what you have to do as part of your work or whatever.
Yes.
But what I'm curious about, Mir, is you have traveled the world and you have met masters in their field.
Yes.
What is it that they have taught you? I'm sure they've taught you so many things that you can't share, but of the things that you can, what have they taught you as a person that you can share with us today?
I think for me, but the things that I keep taking away is to always learn, whether it's to continue learning from your life, from higher sources of information, whether they be kind of book of truths or books of truths, whether you feel that's of a particular religion, that's fine, or of a particular philosophy, that's fine. But that there is always a higher power and something that's bigger than ourselves. We're a small part of a bigger picture and a big part of smaller pictures. It goes all ways at all times, and there's much more than just ourselves. We've got to see the big picture. Yeah. So I guess for me is to continue learning. And one of the best things I heard is, because I'm involved in my kind of lineage martial arts and kind of passing on of information of martial arts, meditation, and perhaps kind of acupuncture and Chinese medicine is to pass on as much information as possible. One of the things is, one of my teachers made this very clear, and he said of himself is that it took him, 28 years of apprenticeship to learn as much as he could from his masters, and he got to a point when he was then able to pass them on to us, and he was trying to pass them on in as quick a time as possible, not to skip things, but just what took him 28 years, because he was in different countries at different times, he could pass on the essence of all of that information and not miss a single thing in perhaps half the time. And I can do the same thing in, perhaps the same time or half the time again. All the Kung Fu that it took me, let's say 30 years of Kung Fu and about 40 years of martial arts experience.
That's how long you've been doing it, is it?
Yeah, martial arts for about a total of 40 years. Kind of Chinese Shaolin Kung Fu for 30 years and the Taoist Neigong, etc. for 20 years. And, instead of kind of saying, listen, you need to go to the top of a mountain and go and sit there and then come to a certain realization, they may or may not do after 30, 40, 50 years of sitting on a mountain on their own. What you can do is pass the essential information on to people so that they get the information quicker. And that's what I'm involved in, is to pass that information on, and it doesn't have to be done in 30 years of cryptic clues, as how I learned it. I could tell you how to do things in 10 or 20 minutes that will skip 5, 10, 20 years of you having to search, which means you're 10 or 20 years ahead, which means you can go off and do something that's 10 or 20 years in the waiting now or tomorrow or the day after. I'm trying to get people better than me faster than I got to this place. That's the most important thing. I want.
And how do you do that, Mir?
What I'll do is, obviously they have to want to learn and they have to put the effort in. But I will pass information on to people who do want to learn and put the time and effort into it, because they're asking the right questions. I have students, and I've only agreed to teach 2 people how to teach. And they've been with me for the best part of, I guess, 20 years. And they're the only 2 people that I'm teaching kind of the Shaolin Qigong system. And, the way I was taught was kind of old school. It's like, okay, here's this little bit, learn this, now go away and practice it for a few years. And then when you have some questions, come back and ask me. And then, I did that for 10, 20, 30 years. But what I could say to them is, okay, here's this little bit, go and practice it, and come back and speak to me next week when you've done it. Okay. And then when they come back and speak to me next week or the next month, I can say, okay, that's really, really good. Now keep practicing a little bit more, but do this to it, do this little tweak to it. What have you found? And then they come back to me a month later, and then we do this and just keep repeating this. So what would have taken me 10 years of researching and coming back and getting a lot of things wrong, and then coming back and saying, oh, I need to do it like this, I can do with them in 1 or 2 years. So now they are as good as I was after 10 years, but only in 1 or 2. Now I want them so that with 10 or 20 years of practice, they are better than I will be in my whole life. And then who knows where they could be after that. I want them to be much better, and I want their students to be much better than me too. People I will never meet or know of.
But you've left a legacy.
Yeah, and it's really important. All we're doing is passing on the torch. It's just one of the things I really like about old American society, kind of like people from the war generation. Is one of the things that they would say to people is just like, when you go somewhere, leave it better than you found it. And that's a really important thing. I don't think people do that anymore, or even say that anymore. And and that might have been, if you find somewhere to camp up in the hill somewhere, don't leave it a mess. Make sure you take your rubbish with you. You leave it clean. You make sure that the stream's working, and if it's got debris in it, clean it so the animals have clean, fresh running water. Or if you go to visit someone's house, you eat dinner at the house, make sure you clean, you wash the dishes, you leave it neat and tidy. You leave them happier and more fulfilled than when you arrived. You leave the place better than it was before you arrived. And that's really important. I think, if I can leave my students better than I found them, and they do the same to them, the world's going to be a better place. The information will be there, and what people do with it is fine. But the possibilities are there. Whereas if I safeguard it and only keep it to myself, because I don't want people to be as good as me, or I don't want people to be better than me, or I want to sell my secrets to the highest bidder for financial gain, then I'm doing the complete opposite. And that's how arts and sciences disappear. And that's why so many martial arts systems have disappeared. That's why so many things in medicine have disappeared, because people are looking for financial gain. And then all of a sudden, the teacher dies, boom, that information's gone forever. And what would have taken hundreds or thousands of years being passed down unselfishly gets to one person who does decide to be selfish. And then it ends, and it's such a shame. We're here for too short a time. I guess in our own human years, we're here in a blink, really, in terms of the universe. So, why not be generous, and why not be kind, and why not be, as useful as possible? Because I think, it just helps so many other people. That's the best way to be, and then we all live better. And I think that's how we got here, because people were kinder, better, and compassionate, and that's how we've got to this place that we are in this great place.
Yes, I mean, to impart the knowledge of the wise ones is very honourable, and it's a huge responsibility. So I think, Mir, do you feel like you have, in a way, a huge responsibility?
Yes, I think in Chinese they call it the burden of, the obligation of burden of
Mm.
lineage.
Mm.
There's a burden to pass things on.
Yeah.
One thing that happens is, you're searching for all this information, and then you find it, and then you're like, wow, superb, and then you keep it, and you find out all you can about it, and then suddenly, perhaps one day, you're the only person with the information, and you think, I'm the only one with information, and your ego kicks in, and you think, I'm the best at this, I'm the only one with this, I'm that one who can do this.
Mm.
And then you get a bit older and wiser and fatter and uglier, and then you think, oh, I'm the only one with this. This is not good. This needs to be passed on. And then, the penny drops, from, the ego kind of suddenly, hopefully disappears, or kind of suddenly realizes that, yes, I'm the only one with this, to suddenly thinking, oh, no, I'm the only one with this. And then you're left with the burden of passing it on. And it's a different ball game when that particular penny drops.
Penny drops.
Right, yeah, the penny drops, and you need to suddenly pass it on. It's not supposed to end with you. You were fortunate in that you were passed the baton, but it does not end with you. You need to pass it on too. And hopefully you pass it on better than you found it, or in as just as good a condition as you found it. And the next person does their thing with it. And hopefully they keep passing it on. So it's just the obligation's real. It's important, and as you know, I'm involved with different martial arts, and in a few of them, I'm involved with passing on in the information in terms of being an instructor, which is fine, and that's as far as it goes, because there are other people who are way more knowledgeable in those particular arts than I am. But in one or two of them, I'm near the top end of the scale. So it becomes way more important that I do pass the information on. Not that I am just an instructor who kind of maybe does or doesn't teach, but it's important that I do teach, and it's important that I do pass it on, because this information may or may not be passed on otherwise. And luckily there are a handful of us who are able to do so, but who knows what happens, and things can happen, which mean suddenly 1, 2, or 3 people in a group of 5 aren't able to pass things on. And suddenly that leaves you with 1, 2, or 3 people who can. And, who knows if you have the time or willingness or the ability to do so. So I think if you can do it whilst you're young enough and have the ability to do so, it's important to do so. And I'm lucky that currently my health is okay, and currently my age is young enough to be able to pass things on. But whether people are ready for truths and big truths is a totally different thing altogether.
Well, that's another ball game altogether, isn't it?
It is.
With regards to this whole purpose in life, and I talk a lot about it, and people talk a lot about finding your purpose. I mean, I think we know our purpose,
Yes,
we're born with it, we know it, our life is destined for it. And a couple of people that I have known in my life, Mir, have denied this knowledge, and it has actually gone against them, because I think we're going to talk sort of now in sort of a spiritual realm, but if we deny who we are, I think all of us, if we deny who we are and we go against really what our soul wants, I think we suffer greatly.
Yes, and I think also from the bigger perspective is that others can suffer too.
Yes.
Because you haven't passed on the information, you haven't been who you were, you weren't the light that you ought to have been, which means other people didn't get to shine, and they weren't able to perhaps commit to their past, they weren't able to pass their tests or be acknowledged themselves. So it's really, really important that we are who we are and who we're meant to be. And, sometimes we more often than not, we have obstacles in the way. We have things from our past, or people held us back, or beliefs we believed untruths about ourselves, whether we thought we weren't good enough or we weren't special or no, we couldn't do this. And you start believing that. And then, decades pass by and then you kind of, it's perhaps too late. But, think about if we had acknowledged who we were, or if we were lucky enough to find teachers, which is why I've sought out masters, because they kind of cleared the path for me. I could have been stuck in places, but they helped me clear my own path so that things were clearer, which enables me to help others. And then who knows what ripple effect that will have into the universe, where, who that would free up, which other people will become lights in their areas just because I was who I'm supposed to be. That's really important. You've got to free yourself. And, often we cage ourselves, often we're caged by others. But if you can try and basically get past that, not be too involved in that, otherwise you're basically telling yourself you're a victim for the rest of your life. Then you don't get anywhere. If you're basically a victim for the rest of your life, what you need to be thinking is, okay, this happened to me. Let's deal with it. But I need to see where it goes beyond this. This isn't who I am. You don't want to identify with or over-identify for too long with your own traumas. You are not your past. You can be something very different now, and you can be very different in the next moment and in your future. Don't hold yourself to your past. And you've got to keep moving forward, because who knows what you can be and where you can be.
It's true. And where you can take other people.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you freed yourself and you didn't believe the lies other people told you. Because people are always going to, it's one of those things that happens down the line, is that people always tell you you're not good enough and you shouldn't do this. And it's because they were scared themselves, or they were told that by other people who were scared or angry or trying to hold them back. And then they pass that on to you, and then you pass your traumas and untruths on to other people, your own children, your own grandchildren, your neighbor, or the person who's got a dream to be something, and you say, "Oh God, don't bother, love. Go and do something else. You'll never make it." And then you've just squashed them. And who knows where they could have been? So, or they might come back to that dream in 30 or 40 years' time. But what if they'd started earlier? They could have inspired other people along the way too. So, things end up where they do. But if you can free yourself, don't identify with your own past traumas for too much, for too long, and move beyond that. You move into a free space, and that's where possibility lies, really. And that's where everyone should be.
That's the vastness, isn't it? The vastness of the soul, where you can feel free. I mean, people are always going to say to us, "You're this, you're that, you're this." Yeah. But we have to then reach a point in our life where we say, well, do you know what? It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, because if you mean good for me, if you want to encourage me, then you feel that in somebody, don't you? When you feel that somebody wants to inspire you, that someone wants you to move forward with your life, you have to remain with those people. The people that criticize you or put you down, they're not your people, are they?
No, that's right. It's really important to keep away from that. You're often a product of your environment, as well as nature, nurture. But one of the big things is the environment. Whether it's down to a cellular basis, or as well, the cell membrane itself, reacts around of its environment and changes according to its environment. It's the feelers to the outside, and it kind of, if you look at stem cells, the membrane on the outside of a cell kind of says, oh, we're around an ear. We should be an ear, and it changes that cell into an ear, or it changes that stem cell into your left toenail, because it's around the left toenail and what it should do, and it reacts to the stimulus around it. And we do as human beings. If you're told you're not good enough, you'll never make this. Why are you doing this? You should lose hope. You're no good. You'll never make it. Then that's what you kind of bring into yourself. But if you can take yourself out of that environment, away from those people, then you'll be living totally different truths and endless possibilities. Or if you're surrounded by that, because that's your family, those are your friends, and you're in a place where people, that's all they think about. You can't leave that town, you can't leave that house, you can't leave that place, then you have to change your own mind. And regardless of what people say to you and you think something else, you've got free mind, and, you have that. When I was growing up, I did this whole, the whole chasing of martial arts and spirituality and medicine. Every single step of the way, people say to me, why are you doing martial arts? Why are you wasting your time with this? Why don't you go and do something else instead? And people will say, why are you learning Chinese medicine? Go and become a doctor like your cousin. Why don't you go and do this and the other? So for decades, people have at every step of the way said, don't waste your time with this. Don't do that. Why are you doing this? And now, 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, people will come to me saying, oh God, how did you manage to do this? This is great. Look how well you've done. Look, I wish I was just like you. These are the same people who decades ago were telling me not to do this.
Yes.
They were the exact same people saying, no, don't do this. Don't waste your time. Now they come to me because I've been doing this for such a long time and I've achieved all that I have. And now they're asking me for help. But they were the ones that were trying to bring me down before, and it happens all the time, and I still get it. People bring you down all the time. And, often it's not, sometimes it's on purpose, of course, because they're envious of who you are and where you are.
Yes.
But a lot of the time it's because where they are in their own minds, and because of what people will like to them. So you have to be strong enough in your own convictions and in your own belief that you are who you are. You've got to kind of overcome these obstacles. Life isn't about everything being easy and a clear path and suddenly you attain nirvana and kind of transcend. That's not what it's supposed to be. There are supposed to be obstacles in the way, and you're supposed to often fail. You're supposed to often, come across adversity, and then you learn from this and you come back stronger. You figure out a new, different way, and a new, different way again. And then you come across something else and you fail again. You think, oh, what do I need to do next time to kind of overcome this? And you just keep going on and on and on. And, we all get to different ends or different places by the end of the game. That's life. But it's, you don't want to stop at the first hurdle where you think, oh, I'm not going to get anywhere. Because of course you're not, because you stopped where you were.
Exactly.
But, if like the rest of us, you just keep thinking, you know what? No, that's what I want to do. I'm not going to listen to the people telling me no. I'm going to listen to people who tell me yes. And you should be the first person that tells yourself yes. When you go to a football game, not that I play football or watch it, but if you go to a stadium, well, before the pandemic, half the stadium is full of people on one side, and the other half is full of people on the other side. So you've got at least 50% of the people, if you're a player, 50% of those people are telling you you're rubbish, you're not good enough, and you're not going to make it. But your aim is to beat that side and to not believe that other side and to score goals and to win. If you're in a stadium full of 50,000 people or 100,000 people, you've got 50,000 people shouting at you, telling you you're no good and you're not going to make it. But remember, there's another 50,000 people telling you that you are. Who do you listen to?
This is the thing. This is one of the greatest battles, isn't it, Mir? In that, what would you say to people out there now who fear is one of the biggest things?
Yes.
The fear that you are going to let somebody down, that you're not good enough, that this is going to happen, that that's going to happen, and, the world's going to collapse. And, it all could be true. But for people out there who want to follow the steps that you are wisely advising, how do you begin? How do you begin to have that courage that if your partner or your brother or your sister or your cousin or your friends or whoever it is saying, you know what, don't bother because it's a rubbish idea, and don't do this, and you're doing this wrong, and what's the first step towards that road of courage?
I would say kind of you've got to have some belief in yourself or knowing what you really want. At least have that direction that you're looking and thinking, actually, no, I do want that. I do actually want that. Have that conviction. Are you going to become the best at the world with it? It doesn't matter. I don't know. But have conviction that, no, that is what I want. Yes, I do want to learn how to do this. I do want to become that. Yes, I do want to become a doctor. Age 54, I'm going to start studying. Or I want to become a black belt in this, or I want to build my own house on an island. Know what you want, kind of, or at least have that direction of thinking, no, I do want that. And then you make little steps towards that. There are always going to be obstacles, but what you do is kind of think, okay, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And then you step around things and you think, okay, but you have that clear sight. So people have what are called vision boards, don't they? They want a vision board of where they want their life to be, or what their house to look like in 20 years' time. And they have that there. And if you need that, then make yourself a vision board, cut things out of a magazine, or draw things, or have a piece of paper with the name of something on it, or, in 20 years' time, you want to be rich and famous, or you want a swimming pool in your house, then you write that down, or you cut things out of a magazine, or if you don't have access to any of that or money for any of that, you keep that in your mind. You don't forget that swimming pool that you want, or that achievement that you want, and then you basically keep that in mind and you keep working towards it, and you turn up. You have to do the hard work.
Yes, that's very true.
One of the things with the black belts, and there's a real cliche in the martial arts, is that a black belt is just someone who just kept turning up, and it's so true. Black belts aren't necessarily special people. As you said in the intro, I've got to a fairly accomplished position in the martial arts, and before me there were people who were way better than me, way more talented, way better in every single way, and I just kept going, and they fell by the wayside because things happen. Life happened, they got bored, they got injured, they decided they wanted to do something else instead. And I just kept going. I just going and going and going and going. And I'm the one that just basically got to the end. Others too, but we got to these goals because we just kept going, because we know what we wanted and we didn't stop going for it. And, life doesn't give you things just because you want it. You have to work for it. And you have to be willing to sacrifice. You have to be willing for the long game. I've got to this place after, like I said, decades. This isn't something I decided on last year and then I got it because my dad was rich. That isn't the case. That's very much not the case. And it's, I got there because I kept working hard. I kept sacrificing, and I sacrificed an awful lot. And so did the people around me as well. They knowingly and unknowingly sacrifice things because of me wanted to get to where I wanted to get to, and it's just worked out. So it's one step at a time, and just know the end goal, because life is going to hit you sideways. You're going to end up somewhere else, and you're going to think you want something else. How many people that we speak to that they're doing something in life, and then you speak to them and you say, oh, what did you want to be when you were a teenager or when you're young? And they all say, I always wanted to be a vet. It's what I dreamed of. I always went to the zoos and I did this, that, the other, and I loved dogs and animals. But, I had 2 children and I had to take up a job in the local supermarket, and this is where I am. That's normal. But, life will always go sideways. But, a lot of the times, if we keep working towards that same goal and we never lose sight of it, often you will get there. Sometimes you get very close, and sometimes you'll be really lucky and launched forward towards it. And it's because, and I think if, like attracts like, and if you're
that's the truth.
And if you're determined and you're working in that direction, those people who are holding you back, and all those people who tell you can't do this, and all those people who tell you aren't good enough, those aren't going to be the people surrounding you anymore. You're going to be surrounded by people saying, you know what, I know someone who can do that. You know what, I can help you towards that. You know what, I think that's a great idea. I think you should do that. That's what you're going to be surrounded by. And the other people in the background, their voices will become quieter, and you'll be in a very, very different place.
Excellent advice, and very true. And I suppose, Mir, it's about what excites your spirit and your soul. What is it that makes you feel alive? And I suppose equally, in knowing what you want, you also need to find out what don't you want. And that eliminates, as you said, the football story. 50% evaporates because, either you want a red car or a blue car. And if you want a blue car, there's no point in looking at red cars.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Why would you be a football player on a pitch in a stadium? Why would you listen to the 50,000 people who are telling you can't do it and you're not good enough and you shouldn't do it? You're going to listen to the 50,000 people who want you to do it, who are egging you on, who are telling you, yes, you can do it, go for it. That's who you listen to, and you have those people in your mind.
Good analogy.
You surround yourself with those people and you have that going forward. And there's always me telling you people you can't do it. I still have people telling me, most weeks I shouldn't do things or can't do things, or why are you bothering to do things?
How do you deal with that?
You know what? I use it as fuel personally. I use it as motivation to go and do it. Like one of the things, I remember someone kind of laughing at me saying, "My God, why do you want to learn how to speak Chinese?" And then they kind of really laughed at me as if to say, don't bother. And that made me think, you know what? I am going to continue to learn how to speak Chinese. Yes. I'm going to do it really, really well. And one day I'm going to surprise you because they can speak Chinese very well. They're a native, and the whole point of a lot of things I have, I've still got goals, and I'm not even doing it just to surprise that person and say, you know what, see, I told you I could do it. I'm doing this for myself because I have other things that are part of the bigger picture that are more important than one person telling me that I can't do it. I've got that to look forward to. That's what I'm aiming towards. I'm not listening to one person who is of little significance in my life tell me that I can't do it. Unfortunately, that's how we're programmed. As human beings, we've evolved to kind of listen to criticism. And if 100 people tell us we're great, but one person tells us we're not, we spend so much of time of our brains thinking, why doesn't this person like me? Why did they? But that's what we do. That's what we're evolved to do. But what we can do is supersede that. We have choice. Don't listen to that one person. Use them as fuel to think. Like I am. I'm going to use that person as fuel to say, oh, you thought I couldn't do it? I'll tell you what, I can. I've had people telling me I can't do things forever. And I'll tell you what, every one of those people, decades later, are coming, looking to me, and they're asking me to inspire them now. And it's, and anyone can do this. If I can, anyone can do this.
Quite an achievement. That's quite an achievement. And I suppose it's a testimony to your courage and faith in yourself. That's one of the most important things, isn't it, Mir?
Yeah, absolutely. But we can all do this. This is just me and my little story. But, every one of those people listening, everyone who's out there, they have this same or similar story, and they can be the new brave person. They can be the person who's inspiring others. You just got to know what you want, and you just go for it. You're going to be in that stadium with 50,000 people booing at you. And that's just life. That is it. But don't forget, you've got 50,000 people telling you to go for it and how great you are. And that's what you look forward towards, and those are the people you work towards. One of the things that actors are told is that when you're in the theatre and you're acting, you're standing out and looking out into the stage, and people look bored, it looks like they don't want to be there. There's always one person who's looking at you in absolute awe, thinking, oh my gosh, this is the most magical thing that's ever happened to me, watching this person out on stage. And actors are taught to focus on that one person, that person you make that difference for. And whether or not what I do is important in the larger scheme of things, if I can affect one person in life who then can go and affect one more other person who can do the same thing, then I've succeeded, and I think everyone can do that, and it doesn't matter if you think what you do is important or big or small, but you should go for it, and you are important. We are all important, otherwise we wouldn't be here.
True, and I love your story about the light that you shared with me a while ago, about being the light in your community, being the light wherever you are.
Yes.
That is such an inspiring story. I still think of it, you know that. And it's beautiful. Just quickly, as we reach the end, um, tell us a little bit about this light, because it was so inspiring. I have to say to everybody out there, you know, when you hear one of these sort of pearls of wisdom, this was one of them. Mir said to me about, I'm going to let him tell you it anyway. Mir, please.
Well, sure. Well, one of the important things is that, you know, the world of darkness, which is currently where we are, I guess, in the universe at the moment, is that we've got to be our own lights. And you have to be the light that is not only the light for yourself, but for others. And you will inspire others because you are yourself, because you are your own light. And other people's lights will come online, and they'll realize who they are, because you are inspirational, because you are being who you are, you know, and who you're meant to be. And if you believe all the untruths and all the things that people tell you you're not and you're not good enough, then your light gets dimmer. But if you believe what you know to be real in yourself, in your own heart, and you know which is the truth, and you become your own person, other people will see that light inside you, and they will become inspired. They will want to go and be the light for others. And it's really, really important, because we're all here. We're all meant to be on this place for a reason, you know. And the problem is we get covered and shrouded in untruths and all these things that hold us back. But when we kind of let go of those things, when those things dissolve, when those things are taken away from us, if we're lucky that we find someone who takes those things away from us, then our light shines within us, and people look to us for inspiration, and people find that, you know. And inspirational people, they hang around with other inspirational people, and other people who aren't inspired look to them. They, oh my gosh, look how amazing that person is, for whatever reason it is, you know. And then they become inspired to become the light themselves. And maybe the more important thing is that they become the light that they're meant to be, and then other people from a distance will see them and become their own light. And you know, it's just so important to become who you are, and you will inspire others to become who they are just by being yourself. And that's really why we're here, you know. And if we go off and do that, and yes, I don't know, maybe we were supposed to be the gym instructor, maybe we were supposed to be the whoever it is, and that's fine. But you know, if you can be who you are along the way, you will touch so many lives and be important to so many other people in so many ways that you wouldn't ever find out and never know in this lifetime. But you can light the way for others just by being who you are. That is really, really important, and that's what we should all strive for. And that's what I strive for. And that's all I do. I just do that on a daily basis, and I am just who I am. And I hope others will be who they are. And you know, things get better for everyone. You know, the world is full of change, and things change at the moment. Things are dark, and tomorrow there will be light again, and it will be dark again and be light again. You know, but we've just got to find ourselves and keep being who we are, and things will be as they are. You know, everything furthers. It'll be fine.
Beautiful. I love that. And that's why I really wanted you to share that, Mir, because it's so simple. And again, simplicity at its best is the most beautiful, and a beacon of light. And that's certainly what you are, and helping others to be the best that they can be. That, I think, is really where we find peace, where we find love and compassion.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
that is what the world needs. That's what our lives need. It's what every single one of us, you know, from whatever sort of animal kingdom, plant kingdom, everything wants to be told they're beautiful, and everyone wants to be loved.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's really important. We all want to be loved. And I think, you know, and I really, truly believe that everyone wants to share their love in really, really genuine, compassionate ways. I think we all want that. And I think we all realize when we are who we are, when we share love, when we share light, that brings real fulfillment and happiness for ourselves, and of course for others too, you know. And it's just And if we can all do that, it just works out better for everyone. I think we can all do that, no matter how big or how little. People can all do that in their own little way. And whether it's you're smiling at someone, or you're kind to someone in a nice, gentle way, you say hello to someone, you clear someone's path, you open the door for someone, or you save someone's life, or you just basically do something that's very kind, small, gentle, that no one would ever know. Whether it's not step on an ant or put a leaf down so the ant can step on it and you move it over the puddle, whatever. These are small and big things at the same time, So, we have to let go of the things that are holding us back and our untruths. Don't identify with your traumas for too long. Acknowledge them, move on. We've got bigger things. Think big.
We've got bigger fish to fry, as they say.
We have.
We have indeed. Oh, dear Mir. Thank you so much. I mean, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. You have so many interesting stories and so many wise things that remarkable, really. I have always something to learn from you. And what about people out there that want to get in contact with you? I have to say this. Where can they do that? Because I know you have a few websites. Sure. What is the best place to contact you?
Sure. Usually it's through the website. My Chinese medicine website is orientaltreatment.com. And the martial arts, Qigong kind of meditation website is warriorhealers.co.uk. And everything I do, really, if you want to boil it down to things, whether it's martial arts or meditation, whatever, really what I'm trying to do is free the human condition. I'm just trying to free the mind, and give you free possibilities. And if we can let go of things, you have freedom. And that's all I teach, and that's all I pass on. And if you're spiritually and physically, mentally and emotionally free, then, the world is yours.
Absolutely. And we've got our wings to fly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we have.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on, Mir.
No problem at all.
It's wonderful. And you'll have to come again, because we're going to, I'd love you to come back and talk about Chinese medicine and herbs and things, because that's really useful. I know that the listeners are always interested in that sort of thing, because we had a lady who is a homeopath, and she came back twice because people were so interested in the natural way. So please come again. We'll arrange a time and you can come and talk about and give advice about all the herbal remedies and things out there.
No problem at all. Absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I wish you all the very best. And
thank you,
you take care. And a happy new year to you and your family.
Yes, happy new year to you too.
All right, then. Take care.
You too, Mimi.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Mir Abbas Ali. Fascinating work and amazing skills and knowledge he has. Thank you, as always, for joining me and for sharing these moments together that mean so much. Until next time, look after yourselves. Enjoy wonderful moments and be wonderfully you. Take care and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast, and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.